Well, I think it's before noon, so officially still morning for some of us. Good morning. Good to see so many of you showing up. I hope you enjoyed the ever frightening session with Paula. Now we thought we had it all good. Now we just know and realize we don't. This session here is called Device Endpoint Management Trends. I will shortly introduce the topics in here and just a quick introduction to me, and then obviously, since we just have 45 minutes, dive right into the session. This is me. My name is Kent, coming from Denmark, which to half the world is the same country as Holland. I don't know how many times, when I'm in the States, people say, so you're from the Netherlands. And in the beginning, I was like, no, it's not the same. But now I just literally just gave up and said, yes, I'm from the Netherlands. I'm from Copenhagen. So I have a background in endpoint management, been working with endpoint management for 25 years. Most of those years, obviously, working out of a basement with, SCCM for... I think since 97, so that's a lot of years. SCCM is still out there, absolutely still out there, managing more than 100 million devices on a global scale. So it's not going to go away, anytime soon. But I do see a trend, especially this year, starting last year, where we are migrating now even enterprises away from SCCM and into Intune, In the beginning, Intune co-managed maybe, but very rapidly into Intune standalone. I didn't see that movement 2 years ago. I didn't see that movement even starting 2 or 3 years ago. It was only the small organizations, but now I see it. So I'm going to talk a little about that. And being a client person, I had the luxury of just focusing on one product. For 23 years, just on one product. It was a huge product, obviously, but I could just device management. How do you spin up a Windows 7 machine? How do you patch a machine, and so on and so forth. That role has completely changed, and not because I necessarily want to change, because hey, I don't want to change, but because the market has forced me to change. So now I would say, as a device endpoint person, most of my time I actually spend on, security, just like Paula introduced you to in the morning, compliance. There is obviously still some imaging going on, but not very much. But it is all blending together. And I'm not saying it's going to be one portal, because I do not know that. But I believe in a few years, we won't be able to see where Intune begins and Defender ends and so on and so forth. It will just be all melded together, and that's what I'm going to talk about in here. So my agenda is what are the trends? What is it that Forrester and Gartner and customers are seeing and saying? What is it that we have to pay attention to? And then compliance. Because, as I said, security and compliance go hand in hand, but sometimes you go like, that's neat, but if I talk compliance inside my organization, I might end up over in the HR department, and then we start to talk about, GDPR and stuff like that. But compliance also means something to our endpoints, and how do I get started? Where do I get started? What is my goal? And if it's too difficult, do I get started at all, or do I just, focus on something else that I know about? So just want to make sure that we know where to get started, and all of us can get started on Monday morning. So that's kind of the 42 minutes that we have left here. So first of all, some management trends. And the first chart here, you can see I think it has a start date in 2016, and that's like, so what are the investments made in device management? And that's super interesting, because in what direction are we actually heading? Meaning, hey, do I still have a job, coming to 2024? Because I would really love to have a job also next year. And I can see both, solutions, services, and so on it's just growing. We can also see that from the numbers of devices being managed by the Microsoft systems. Now I am a Microsoft person. That's what I do for a living, and we can see in total we have about I think it's like 200 million devices in management when we combine SCCM and Intune today. So that's just rapidly growing year after year, quarter by quarter. And obviously the services are becoming more and more mature here. Now, the number one topic when we address a CTO is still security. I have some numbers. I know Paula showed you a couple of numbers just before. I have some other numbers. That is, to me, scary, insane, and also, hey, there is an opportunity for a consultant right there. But it remains the top issue for CTOs. Then another super interesting fact was that 1/3 of the world's population, pretty much all of us in here, we have some privacy regulations that our organization needs to know about. They need to make sure that you're not sharing your personal data, they're not sharing your personal data, and so on and so forth. But it's not only PI data, it's a lot of other stuff. But that's like 1/3 of the world's population. We have to, as a CTO, pay attention to this. We can't just ignore that and say, hey, that's just GDPR, that's fine. Let them take care of that. And then another thing, and to be honest, I have no freaking idea what we are going to do about this. But the number of IoT devices, will be more than 29 million or billion. That's insane. That's insane, especially because the majority of these devices here are non-managed, and 70 to 80% of all ransomware attacks begins, by attacking non-managed devices. So it's a huge, huge risk. And then finally, and this is the interesting fact to me, by 26, that's in 2 years, right? 10% of us will have, we will have what we call a mature zero trust program in place. Today, it's less than 1%. And then, you read about zero trust, you engage and you go like, holy cow, how can I do this all by myself? And you realize you have to fix a printer, so you never get started. But done is better than perfect. So just doing something is way better than, not doing anything. So these are the trends. This is what, I'm looking for. I definitely need to get my head around what are we going to do about all the IoT devices. There is no doubt about that. Zero trust. I have some starting points here. I'm pretty sure, some of you in here already have begun that journey. And the top 10 mistakes, we have a session coming up right after this about also top 10 mistakes, but they told me yesterday they're never making any mistakes. But I do, so I have top 10 up here. Inadequate metrics for success. What I mean by this is we do not know what the goal is. And if you do not know what the goal is of what it is that you're achieving, there is no way you can measure success. So the first part would always be, figure out what it is you're doing and why you're doing it and how it's moving your organization. Failing to move with times. It's something that I see over and over again. 2 days ago, I went to a fairly large organization in Denmark to talk about Defender and look at what they had. They implemented Defender, migrated off Kaspersky, February 24th of the last year, and they hadn't touched it since. So pretty much almost 2 years, migrated 25,000 devices from Kaspersky into Defender in just less than a week because of what happened in Ukraine, and then they haven't touched it since. So they have no idea, what is improved, what is everything looking like, and so on and so forth. Premature vendor engagement, I'll quickly go through some of these here. Failing to manage change, that's another thing. You probably have heard and already discussed internally, how are we going to use infrastructure as code? And what is the cool thing about using infrastructure as code to manage everything that we have? Well, one of the things that is a big winner to me is that if I make a change in the UI, and I do that because sometimes I'm lazy, so I just go in and we can fix this, but there is no change control, then overnight, that whatever change I made will be reverted back, meaning that you have to go through the proper process, because things are changing so rapidly right now that if we don't have a process, we do not know who did what and why and so on and so forth. So that part is super important. I'm going to need this Cloud PC here in a few seconds. Then too big to fail. We have no plan B. So we're building all of this, but what if something goes wrong? But nothing. What could potentially go wrong? Well, how many do you have in your team? Well, I have 10. I have these 3 experts. Well, those 3 experts, they get new job offers once a week. So what if they take that? Then you have 7 people on your team, but you have no leaders. You have no one who are deep experts, meaning that you're halfway through a project and you will never finish the implementation. That I have seen many, many, many times. And then over-reliance on implementation partners. This is like, Paula talked about this before. We have AI and it provides us with a lot of information. She used a demo where she had a Kusto query and just need to fix this because I can see the query, the information that it gives me back is almost okay, but I just need to fix this and then it works. What if you cannot spot that? So what if you use AI, you use the results, and based on whatever you get back, you just make the wrong decisions. That's one of the mistakes that I've seen we're doing. So what can we do about it? When we take security and compliance, then first of all, regulatory compliance also impacts us. It also impacts how you manage your IT. So it's not only about paying and selling and employees and so on and so forth. It will also impact you. There are a few things. First of all, obviously, we have to be able to walk before we can run and so on and so forth. That's super important. We all know this. But what I've seen lately is that at one point, we get up, we really want to do it, and then, we just start to go downhill again. And before we know it, we are back to where we were in the beginning for many different reasons. We lost some good colleagues, maybe budget cost, maybe, we have a war going on somewhere and so on and so forth. And the truth is, you need, as I said before, done is way better than perfect. So don't wait until you have everything. Get started as soon as possible. And get all the basics done. This is what you can do, and this is probably what you have done. And if you haven't done this, then there's probably a good reason. But get it done right away. And when you do start working with your security baselines, I know when you start working in Intune and so on and so forth, there are like 10 different ways you can do stuff. So instead of using the baselines, the security baselines in Intune, I use them for inspiration. I take the policies and then I kind of convert them. I never really apply the baseline because, let's face it, there's just too many settings in there. And what happens if I apply it? Will it apply to everybody? And so on and so forth. So there are just a few things over here, move them over so you don't work with the baselines, but with the content of the baseline. And then for Edge, This is one I've heard so many times. So we are protecting edge. We have the edge security baselines in here, but this next question is, so do you enforce the use of edge? Can you only use edge in your organization? Oh, hell no. Because half the people are using Chrome, the other half is using Firefox, and so on and so forth. But you only apply all of your security settings to Edge. So what do you do? What do you do with those other browsers? And in here, I don't know if you're familiar with the security technical implementation guides, but we have something called the sticks, and the sticks are additional source of information. They will give you, for a lot of the non-Microsoft products, they will give you recipes to how do you actually protect your data. What is it that you have to worry about? So if I see where I have it. So here I just have now we just talked about the browsers. So this is just the implementation guide to Google Chrome, where I can figure out how many high severities do we have, medium severities, and so on and so forth. I can take all of this, I can download it to Excel if I wanna be playing around with this. And obviously I can also move in here and have a look at the what is it exactly, what's the impact, and what are the settings, and how do I implement this. So you will have this for, as I said, not only the Chrome and the Firefox browser, but for a ton of other and additional applications up here. You also have it for the Windows OS and so on and so forth. So this is, I'm just cautious of time here. So this is like, the bare minimum, I would say. Then I have another source of inspiration. This one here comes from Australia. I just, call it kill your darlings. Remove the stuff that we do not, need. We have been talking about SMB1 for years, but this team here, they actually have, I have this in here as well, but they have a complete free hardening guide that we can go in and use. And I know, don't worry about the script, because that's just the example I used here. But in here you will see, they have docs and they have policies, they have it all. You don't have to go in here and kind of implement everything, because let's face it, you have this, you have CIS, you have NIS, you have a lot of different regulations. You need to figure out which one that you're using. I've spent some time in here, and it's a really, really good starting point. And they have a lot of really good thoughts, and you get everything. It's completely free, it's completely open, and it's well documented. So this one here is another great source, where you can start and just remove those features, like quick assist. You don't want anyone to be able to log in without any locking. So I can remote in and help someone, and there is no locking available. That's bad. So this one is good. Then this one here is a great source. So Hardening Kitty, I do not know how many of you know about this this framework here. If you have the Microsoft E5 license, and then you have access to the regulatory compliance, you have access to Purview and so on and so forth, which is really, really great, because there you have an immense amount of information. If you do not have that, and you wanna, you have been creating a new image, autopilot, whatever, before you send it over and say, hey, can you do a pen test of this? Then you can use Hardening Kitty in here. Hardening Kitty is a community project. So it started, by someone who just needed to, hey, I need to create a Windows 10 image, and I need to make sure it's secure. It grew very fast, and now we have guidelines support here, from Microsoft, from CIS, from the sticks, and DoD, meaning that I can actually take my laptop here, and then I can run Hardening Kitty against this and say, okay, so how, what do I look like? They will give me a score from 1 to 6, and it will also give me a CSV file with everything. So I have all the settings from my CIS benchmarks, for instance. How are you doing on encryption? How are you doing on this? How are you doing on that? And so on and so forth. And that's just, I can just collect that and then present that. How you collect the CSV files is entirely up to you. How you run it out there on each device, entirely up to you. But if you have Intune, if you have log analytics, you can pretty much automate that. So this I can run against Windows 10, 11, servers 2012 R2 and above, and they are upgrading this. I see this very similar to the app deployment toolkit. The app deployment toolkit is also a community tool, right? You have probably been using that, or seen that, or heard that, because it has been around for, 10, 12 years, something like that. This is pretty much the same. So we use this. So when we engage in conversations with customers and they don't have access to any additional sources, this is a great way. So let me just see if I had. This is why I needed my cloud PC here. So what I have done in here is I've implemented hardening Kitty, and we are doing that in a couple of ways. You can just it's all documented, so I haven't done anything super smart or anything like that. And then I just execute it. So when I do execute it, I can use audit, but I can also use configure. So I can actually say, okay, I have this file here containing all the right, configurations that I want to implement. So go ahead and configure. So if something is not correct, then you just go ahead and configure that. There is also a mode called Hail Mary, which is, and you run it, and then you go like, I hope it works. But it will just go ahead, and configure everything. Right? It's kind of interesting because what works on your device after that? If everything works, hey, you're good. But if I go ahead and execute this, then it's just going to look at, now this time here, it's only an audit, right? But it's going to go through all of these steps that I have. It's going to go through all of these checks. It's going to present me with a CSV file, but it's also going to present me with a score in here from, as I said, from 1 to 6. And obviously looking at this is not super interesting. But here you can see, oops, if I just scroll down a little bit, here is my score. So on this PC here, I have a score pretty close to 4, which is, it's not super bad, but it's not, fantastic either. And if I look, you'll just see it produced another CSV file. That CSV file, while Paula was talking, I just imported that CSV file into Excel. And here you go. So here I have, the categories, the names, the recommended value, the test, and so on and so forth. So for me, it would be super simple to go in and say, okay, I would like to, this is in Danish, so you can get a Danish lesson while we are doing this. I would like to look at all the failed. And I have one failed with high severity, fully encrypted. Holy cow. Maybe not so good, but this is a cloud PC, so it's not, we don't encrypt it like that. But it gives me, all the insights that I know are a really, really good starting point just by running a script. So now the next question is, if I do not want to walk around on 12,000 end users' devices, how can I do this? Just click OK to that one. And one of the things that you can obviously do is you can just take the script that you had and put it in as a remediation into Intune. So this is what used to be called a proactive remediation, but here I just have pretty much the same script. So I just, run this, execute this, then slightly modified the script. So if I just go back here, I have the modification in here. So we're executing the script, and then at the end in here, we're taking the output, and then we are adding that output there to log analytics. So once I have done that, it means that in my log analytics, I now have a hardening kitty, set of information, and then in here I have all of my information. So now I can start visualize, in whatever way you would like to visualize this, because that's also super important. How are we telling the world, our CTO and what have you, hey, we need to do something about this. So once we have it in log analytics, you can go ahead and create all of your Power BI queries and so on and so forth. This is kind of cool, right? I've attended a ton of sessions, and I always go like, if there is just one thing I can take away from a session, then I'm happy. So I hope this one here, if you haven't seen the hardening kitty before, makes you happy, because it literally takes you 5 minutes, and then you're going. Then you can run it against, maybe not all of your devices in your organization, but just run it against a subset. Or when you have built a new image, as I said, see how do you actually perform against some of the regulations that we all know, the CIS benchmarks and so on. I needed to find a kitten. Cool. Then another thing you need to know about is you need to know about the Microsoft Digital Defense Report, period. Microsoft they're releasing a report, once a year, and they literally just released a report, an updated report here like in October. So this is the Microsoft view of security, and remember, they're reading trillions of signals from all of our devices, everything that Paula talked about, and then they're putting that, summarizing that, putting that into a report. There is about 100+ pages, and they also have an executive summary. And in this executive summary, this is pretty neat. 80 to 90% of successful ransomware compromised came through unmanaged devices. Okay, cool. So what is an unmanaged device? That's a good question. How many devices do you have? That's another good question. The thing is, an unmanaged device is a device that you have on your network, or you can see in your network, that is not managed by your directory, your antivirus, your XDR, and so on and so forth. So you need to be able to collect, correlate that data, and then spit out and say, okay, this is the list of devices that I have. And another thing, and Paula also alluded to this, that the majority in here, we had fewer than 500 employees. And I think the Netherlands is very similar to Denmark. Obviously, I know you have some humongous companies here, but you also have a lot of companies, with thousands and less employees, just like we have. So this report, super interesting, and let's see if I can find that page here. The basic security hygiene still protects against 99% of all attacks. That's crazy. That is literally saying, if you can just get the basics right, you're not protected by everything, but 99%. And then I know these, this is Microsoft saying that. So let's say it's 95%, but I take 95% any day. So this report here is great reading. Cool. And then because the summary, the executive summary is also 10 pages. So it's like, holy cow, you know. So we just ran that through a Bing chat and say, you know, can you shorten the summary and just, you know, give me a summary of the summary. So this is what it gave me. So it's all coming from the same report there. We still have 10 minutes, which is good. So another thing, if you have the right license, so you know, if you do have access and E5 access to Purview and so on and so forth, we have the assessments coming from Microsoft. And I know a lot of organizations that are, you know, in possession of an E5 license and never even started Purview, because they go like Purview, data classifications, you know, DLP, information protection, and so on and so forth. We are not even close to start that journey. And that's right, but Purview is so much more. So with Purview in here, you have the old compliance manager, meaning that I can go in and then I can fairly easy, based on the signals coming in from, you know, should say security score, not scope, but Defender for Cloud and Viva, we can see, you know, how are we actually doing. So it will just go in and assign me a lot of points and say, hey, Kent, on this you're doing really, really bad. But if you take these 10 actions in here, you will be doing so much better. I'll show you in just a few seconds. So they have some free assessments, and then they have some premium assessments. And I know the premium assessments, those are the assessments, you know, they're regularly updated. So Microsoft is spending a ton of time and effort on updating these. This could be, there are some local assessments in here for Holland as well. I can show you the list. But the free assessments, you know, just go in and use them. And within your E5 license, you actually do have access to 3 of the premium ones. And if you need, you know, number 4, number 5, last time I checked, it was like $5,000-$6,000 per year, you know, to get that assessment. And assessment can be, hey, I want to be compliant to CIS, or I want to be compliant to ISO, you know, 27001 or something like that. So it's you know, money on top of money, and you already purchased the license. But if you can get a, you know, complete ISO assessment program for $6,000, it's probably worth it. I'll show you in just a few seconds. But it does include improvement actions. And on top of that, if you do want to know about CIS compliance, Microsoft they have a lot of these assessments here are looking at CIS. They have a lot of inspiration from CIS. So, you know, just make sure you go in and check this one here as well. But let me just show you. Let me just close some of this. That's so here we are. So if you, as I said, if you haven't looked at the compliance manager before or Purview before, you know, start by focusing on the compliance manager. It's fairly easy. Well, all of your improvement actions are not that easy, but it works like this. You have an assessment, and we have, you know, close to 400 assessments in here. You apply that assessment, you know, you run it against your environment. You wait for 24 hours, you know, to get all the data back, and then you get all the improvement actions. So in here I can see, you know, based on all of the assessments that I have deployed in this demo environment here, my compliance score is 43. That's not, you know, very high, but this is an almost empty tenant. But I will, you know, I'll be able to see down here, you know, what are my key improvement actions? What is it that I should be focusing on? And I can see a compliance score breakdown. So if I go, you know, all the way down, I can see, you know, that's not interesting. But infrastructure cloud, as I said, there is nothing in this tenant, so it's like 0%. But let me just go over here. So let me have a look at my improvement actions. So here I see Here you see a list of all the improvement actions. You can see some of them are saying pending update. So that means that Microsoft made an update to this, and I just need to go in and say, okay, I would like to update it. And I can see, so what is the update that they have made? So, there might be a change in one of the ISO standards or something like that. Otherwise, I can just go in and then have a look and see, what is it exactly that I need to improve in here. So I just clicked on one of the improvement actions. Let that just run. Just before I'm running out of time here, I just want to show you the regulations and the assessments. Let me add a new assessment here. So when I add an assessment, let's say you want to get started on CIS, for instance. Then you can see down here, we have all of these CIS regulations. So these are all the assessments containing, tons of different actions that we are going to look at. And all you got to do is just apply this one here. And when we apply this one, just apply it against a group. And then it will take about, as I said, 24 hours before we can actually see, okay, so according to this regulation, how are you doing? So if let me just go into my, I have one here, Denmark Data Threat Protection. So this one here has been applied for, I think like half a year ago, something like that. So how am I doing on all of these controls in here? And it has just a long list of all the controls. So, it's just combined in here. And I'll also be able to see, in just a few seconds, what are my improvement actions. So what is it that I'm supposed to be doing in here? Pretty much like when you're looking at your exposure score in the security center, or the secure score in the security center. You have like a list of, this is what it looks like. This is what you should be doing. It's exactly the same in here. And obviously, not everything is technically, and that's why for someone like me who has been a technician all my life, I go like, so what is the evidence here? And it can be a process, and then I need to, find the evidence, upload the evidence, and so on and so forth, because sometimes the evidence is not something that we can automatically figure out. It's, do you have your process in place? And this is where I hope I have some colleagues that can assist me, because I'd much rather do all the other stuff that we can fix in, in settings and so on and so forth. But getting started with the compliance manager in here, it's fairly easy. The biggest challenge is, do we have access? Do we have access to the license, or don't we have access to the license? And then, as I said before, if you do not have access, start by looking into hardening Kitty. I would say even if you have Purview, start by looking into this one here. 10 minutes, and you'll see some results. And then also, make sure that you check the hardening guidelines in here. You don't have to use all of it. So it's not like you're going to implement, all the CIS controls and all the hardening guidelines we have here and so on and so forth. You need to figure out what works for you. And then, as I also mentioned in here, you need to, not the basics. I presume you already have the basics done, but you also need to learn about the sticks, so you can, at least protect your Chrome, at least protect your Firefox, because it's the majority of us are not allowed to use only Edge in our organization. Even though we might want to do that, we are just not allowed to do so. Yeah. Any of you already using hardening Kitty? Yep. Yeah. Just for fun, or also seriously at customers and customers? Yeah. You cannot just nod your head when there is a yes/no question. Cool. So that was actually on time. My 45 minutes of fame here today. So the key takeaway is, do something That's really it, because we will never get more time. That's the number one issue that I see out there. We are thin on resources, so just do something. Get started, and you have to be curious, because there are a lot of tools out there that can be used. I just found 3 of them that I've been using here for the past year or so, and they have helped me a lot. So with that, enjoy the rest of the day, and I don't know if there are any questions. Otherwise, I'll stick around here. Cool. Thanks a lot.